Blog Talk Radio.
Warning, the following program may include profane language, controversial viewpoints, and perspectives on the true nature of reality so far removed from the status quo, they'll make your head spin like a top. Young children, corporate executives, and religious fundamentalists should turn away now.
Hola, sisters and brothers. Welcome to Extraordinary Year. I'm your host, Tim Bravo. I thank you for joining us tonight. T-minus 79 days until December 21st, 2012. Now, I've just discovered that I have created quite a flub this evening. That there's some miscommunication and a misunderstanding on my part. And so for viewers who are tuning in to hear Bashar this evening, we will actually be speaking with Darryl Anka, the channel for Bashar, and we won't get a chance to speak with Bashar tonight, and that's my bad, miscommunication, misunderstanding on my part. So for those of you listening, and we're going to talk with Darryl about Bashar, and I know, Darryl, you're on the line here.
Yes.
You obviously are quite familiar with what Bashar has to say about pretty much everything that he's ever said. So
pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. So I'll do my best to bring that information through to you, and I apologize if there was anything on my part that caused confusion about whether you'd be talking to him or me, but I will do my best. I'm
sure that all will be as it should be.
I agree.
And as you are definitely the leading authority on this particular subject, then I don't think that we're going to be missing much. So now, when I initially invited or sent this invitation to you, it was at the suggestion of a listener. I had heard of Bashar before, but only through a single video, which featured only Bashar's voice over a music bed, no video.
Right.
I was under the impression that Bashar was someone like, listeners out there and myself, an everyday earthling with a grasp of spirituality that was beyond everyday understanding. Now, I remember being astounded at the fluidity of his responses and thinking to myself, now, here's a guy who just gets it. So you can imagine my surprise upon researching Bashar and learning he's actually an extraterrestrial being channeled through you, our brother, Darryl Anka.
That is how he presents himself. Now, of course, I never insist that anyone has to believe that Bashar is real. I have no way of proving that Bashar is an extraterrestrial being. Certainly, this could be another aspect of my own consciousness. I have my own validations for Bashar being who he says he is, but I have to allow the channeling to come through in the way that it does present himself, and I just take him at his word. So there may be an opportunity in the near future to actually have some kind of face-to-face contact with him and his people, and at that point, of course, we'll have all the physical proof we need. At this point, from my understanding, the most important thing for people to actually focus on is not so much whether it's coming really from an extraterrestrial being or not, but what is the content of the information? Does it allow you to make the kind of positive changes in your life that you want? And to me, that's really more the proof of the pudding.
No, I hear you. Well, in channeling, there's something that we talk about on the show from time to time, and regular listeners are going to know that I personally place a lot of value on some channeled messages, like those from Edgar Cayce, Seth, Ra through the Law of One series, David Wilcock, Abraham through Esther Hicks.
Right.
But while I might discuss more recent channelings like Seleucus, Sol, or various Galactic Federation channels, I also commonly withhold judgment and leave it up to the listener's own discernment whether to place any faith or value in those messages. But I'm here to tell you that I have no problem standing behind the decision to present this talk with you this evening, because both my reason and my intuition tell me that this is the real deal, and I'm personally honored and really grateful for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. So not just to have this experience myself, but to be able to share whatever is, whatever this night will, whatever will unfold. I'm sure it's going to be for the greatest good for all. So,
all right. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
We are blessed to have you. So thank you for your service and for being with us.
My pleasure.
Okay. So could you please give us kind of a Cliff Notes version of how you came to know Bashar and start your work with him?
Absolutely. The inciting incident for all of this actually started back in 1973. I had two very close broad daylight UFO sightings here over Los Angeles, where I live. First time only about 150 feet up, and the second time only about 70 feet up, about a week apart. Both times an equilateral triangular ship, black in color, one bright blue-white light on each point and a dull orange light in the center on the bottom. I couldn't see the top. Both sightings lasted between 30 seconds to 60 seconds, but unmistakably looking at a craft. Both sightings with witnesses present with me both times. After having seen something that startling and out of the ordinary, and now knowing for a fact, rather than speculation, that UFOs existed, I started doing a lot of research into what was behind all of this. And over the years, it led me to come across other kinds of books, like you said, metaphysical books about channeling and psychic phenomenon, and so on and so forth. And 10 years after the sighting, I was actually introduced to a channel who was doing seminars at the time, and I was listening to the information coming through that channel from the entity. And I found that the information seemed helpful, and eventually the entity actually offered to teach channeling for those that were interested. And I went into the class not because I thought I wanted to be a channel. I went into the class because I wanted to further my research, and I really wanted to understand how something like channeling could be taught, because I just thought it was something that sort of automatically happened to people. In the class, which was a series of guided meditations to allow you to get more in touch with whatever you wanted to, be it an aspect of your own consciousness or whatever, while I was in a meditational state, a telepathic connection happened. And in that one blink of an instant, I understood that the UFO had been shown to me on purpose to get me to move in the direction I needed to move in. A memory actually came back of having made an agreement before this life to do this with Bashar. And Bashar's information, in a sense, identity was there. And the question that was asked of me was, now you remember that we made this agreement. Now you know it's time to begin. Is this something you still want to do? Now, I had to think about this for a while because I wasn't really sure whether I was hallucinating. It was a side effect of the meditation or something. But the second that this was going on in my head, the entity who was talking through the channel that was teaching the class stopped talking and actually turned to me and said, there is somebody here for you if you're ready to begin. And at the same moment, another person in the class actually saw an image of what I saw in my head and drew it on a piece of paper. So I instantly had two outside validations that there was something real going on. And for that purpose, I decided to continue, see where it would go. I eventually was offered the opportunity to co-channel the next class with the teacher, and eventually a woman doing the first doctoral thesis on the connection between psychology and channeling asked me to be one of her subjects for her paper. And in so doing that, I would basically channel to her friends in her home. She would write her notes and do her paper, but week after week, it just kind of grew by word of mouth. And the first week was 5 friends, the second 10, the third 20, and pretty soon we had to start doing it more than one night a week, and then we had to do it in more than one house a week, and then we had to start renting auditoriums because so many people just simply wanted to come and hear what Bashar had to say. And it just kind of led from there, word of mouth, and I started doing it in different cities, different countries, and I've been doing it now for almost 30 years, basically, that way.
Very cool. And this picture that was drawn, this was of Bashar, or the entity that is taking the name Bashar?
Yeah, because they don't really have names in their society. They're telepathic. They don't need names, but he knew we needed to call him something. So it actually turns out that part of my background is Middle Eastern. I'm half Middle Eastern, half Irish. And it was a word, I don't speak Arabic or any language in the Middle East, but it was a word that I ultimately discovered was an Arabic word. And it was plucked from somewhere out of the ethers or some part of my consciousness, I don't know what. But I just thought it was his name for a while until he explained they didn't have names. But it was another person who spoke Arabic who ultimately, a couple of years after I had been channeling, said, "Do you know what that word means?" And I said, "No, I have really no idea." And he said, "Well, it means messenger or bringer of good news." So I understood that even though it's not literally the entity's name, it is a description of what he's doing. And so we just use it as his name for the sake of convenience.
Can you describe the physical appearance? I mean, ultimately, I understand it's not really that important, but it's a curiosity for myself and for listeners.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He is what most of us, I think, have come to understand as a hybrid being, about 5 feet tall, relatively thin, whitish skin, enlarged eyes, slightly larger head. The males have no hair. The females do. It tends to be white. Their features are relatively small other than the eyes. And they are, as far as I understand, the product of what many people have become familiar with as the alien abduction phenomenon, as it's referred to, where they say that the entities called the Greys have used their DNA and our DNA to create a hybrid race to perpetuate their culture. Well, as Bashar has explained it, his civilization is one of those hybrid races, and that there are actually several others.
I see. Well, and that kind of brings up another point. The ship that you've described, and I'm sure you've fielded this question before, but the ship you described sounds a lot like the Black Triangle craft called the TR-3B in ufology circles.
I have seen a depiction of that. This is different in the context that it was, all the depictions I've seen of the TR-3B are somewhat curved on the top and bottom, and I have heard rumors that this is more of a reverse-engineered ship from extraterrestrial technology that was recovered from crash sites. This was completely flat-sided and completely flat black with absolutely no other features on it other than the lights that I could see. This was also way back in 1973 it was many, many years before I ever even heard of another sighting of a black triangular craft in the literature of UFOs at all.
Oh,
so I'm not really sure if it bears enough resemblance to the craft that you're talking about to be the same craft. This, I think, would be something that would actually be more representative of what the hybrids themselves use, as opposed to something that I think, as far as I know, is actually a reverse-engineered Earth vehicle of some type.
I see. Well, that's good. That clears that up. It was something I was curious about, and just the similarities in description. And I assume that, there's a strong possibility that, if all the technology that we have, and when I say we, I mean Earth humans, the Black Ops, the Black Projects type technology that we've heard about, that we've sometimes seen, that we know is out there, but it obviously has to be reverse engineered from the actual thing, from the real McCoy. And so I guess it stands to reason that, you might see something similar to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I've gone over the experience of both sightings many times in my mind and with the other witnesses that saw it with me. And, whether it was the product of something we made or something extraterrestrial, it certainly behaved unlike any technology we had ever seen. It was dead silent, dead smooth, had no visible means of propulsion whatsoever. So obviously, no matter who made it, representative of an extremely advanced technology. Just
kind of hanging out in the sky. And then you did see some movement?
It was hovering stock still, and then it took off, in the first incident, straight across over the city, smooth as glass. I've never actually seen a motion like this. It's when you see like a plane move or a small plane move, there's always some either up and down or side to side motion to it. This was almost like it was sitting on top of a piece of glass and sliding. It was that dead flat straight in terms of its movement. And in the second sighting, it actually crossed right in front of my car across an intersection, and the friend that was in the car with me and I actually followed it. I turned down the street to follow it, and it was actually zigzagging over a residential neighborhood, and we were turning left and right down the residential streets trying to keep up with it, and it was obscured from sight now and then because we couldn't see it above the trees in the neighborhood. And finally I made a right-hand turn down one street, and my friend who was leaning out the car window riding shotgun just sort of yelled, "Stop," and we got out, and this thing was just hovering dead still above us about 70 feet, and then it just shot straight up in the blink of an eye and disappeared.
Amazing. I'm kind of jealous. But it's probably good that you saw something like that. I mean, I've seen craft, and I've seen, things, but nothing solid, always light craft is what I've seen.
Yeah, no, this was an absolutely solid physical object in broad daylight. It was absolutely unmistakable. It would be like somebody looking at, something the size of a helicopter, 70 feet away and not being able to tell what they were looking at. This was that solid.
Okay, so the main reason that I began this show to begin with at the beginning of the year is the topic that we all talk about called Ascension. In an extraordinary year, we're looking at the year 2012. We've been looking forward to this year. Well, a lot of people have been looking forward to this year for quite some time. And that's because of the prophecies of Ascension, the harvest, the golden age, the new age, etc. And I don't know how many listeners out there who are new to Bashar, or how many people are tuning in who've checked him out beforehand, but Ascension seems to be one of the favorite topics that people seem to like to ask him.
Yes.
And it makes perfect sense to me.
Sure.
And I have I have a pretty good idea of how you might answer some of these questions, but for the sake of the audience, I'm going to ask them anyway, because I'm floored at the way that Bashar is able to communicate these abstract concepts to our modern Western minds. So could you please explain to listeners just what this thing we call Ascension is and how it works the way that Bashar presents it?
Yeah, one of the things that I really appreciate about the way Bashar delivers information is he, no pun intended, really brings it down to earth. He explains it in a way that has a lot to do with the physics of the situation and the reasons why, in physics terms, this actually works. And so Ascension to him is really the simple process of elevating the frequency of the energy that represents our signature vibration as beings. We're all made of energy. We all have a vibrational frequency that represents, in a sense, who we essentially are. And the idea of the transformation going on in our world now, and the reasons why we're exploring such things as spirituality and the expansion of consciousness, allows us to increase the rate of our vibrational frequency. And when we do so, when we uplift that frequency, we're rising to a higher state of being that makes us, in Bashar's words, kind of more sensitive antennas to be able to receive and download even higher frequencies, higher understandings, higher inspirations, much broader information. It gives us the ability to have a bigger perspective, a higher point of view, and it actually also physically alters us, changes our energy state, and changes how we experience physical reality, and changes what we're capable of seeing and capable of creating in our reality as an experience. So it's a very multi-leveled kind of thing. But when it comes right down to it, it all connects to the phrase we hear in metaphysical circles over and over and over again, which is, follow your bliss, act on your passion, follow your excitement. And the reason that Bashar says that is so important to do is because what we call excitement, what we call passion, what we call unconditional love, that feeling, that sensation, he's saying, is actually your physical body's translation of the frequency of energy that actually represents your true core self. So the more you're willing to act on things that contain a reflection of that excitement, the more in alignment you are with who you truly are, and it helps you divest yourself of the things that we may have gotten attached to in terms of belief systems that are out of alignment with our true self, things that don't really serve us, negative beliefs, and so on and so forth. And by aligning with that energy, it helps us go through the process of letting those things that don't serve us go, and allows us to become truly more and more and more of who we actually are in our core. And so it all connects to the idea of excitement in order to experience a more accelerated form of ascension. Bashar is basically saying the simplest way to do that is to always make sure that you are choosing to act on whatever it is that contains the highest amount of excitement every moment that you can, and taking it in as far as you can. But the interesting thing he adds to that is you need to do that with absolutely no expectation as to what the outcome ought to be, because we don't necessarily always know exactly where our excitement needs to lead us, but we have to trust that it's representative of our higher self and that it knows where it's taking us, even if we don't always have an intellectual comprehension of where we may wind up. But he's basically saying trust that vibration because it's really who you are.
And if we don't attach to our expected outcome, then we won't be disappointed, or as disappointed, I guess.
Well, the idea is he's actually saying it's not about just not being disappointed. He's saying that we're actually limiting ourselves if we have too strong of an insistence on a particular outcome. The way he puts it is that we have, as a whole person, a physical mind and a higher mind that's non-physical. The physical mind is designed to do certain things. It might be what we call the personality or the ego structure, and it's basically designed to do a job. And that job is to keep us focused in the physical reality experience. But he's saying the physical mind is not designed to actually know how something is going to happen. It's just not built that way. It's only designed to experience how things are happening right here, right now. The higher mind has the bigger picture. It's standing on the mountaintop. It can see farther. It knows how things are going to happen. So when the physical mind gets stuck in insisting that a certain outcome must be the outcome that happens, we're actually closing the door to different avenues, different outcomes that the higher mind could bring us that might actually be even greater than the physical mind was capable of imagining. And so by insisting on a particular outcome, we're actually limiting what could happen. He's saying it's all well and good to visualize, and it's all well and good to get excited about that visualization. But the purpose of a visualization from the physical mind's point of view is to simply generate the state of being, that state of excitement, and then let go of the picture and allow the higher mind to fill that state of excitement with whatever the manifestation is that actually represents that state of excitement. Because often, more often than not, the picture that the physical mind had is actually just a limited symbolic interpretation of what the manifestation actually needs to be. And what to the physical mind might seem to be the ultimate reality, from the higher mind's perspective, is just the beginning. We can't see anywhere near as far as it can. So he's saying drop the insistence, drop the expectation in the negative sense, because you're actually doing yourself a disservice, and you're limiting the ways in which that manifestation could actually occur much greater than you possibly could have imagined.
I think that's going to take some mental gymnastics on the part of some people to let go of that habit, that we've taught ourselves. But it sounds valuable.
Let me interject something else there. Now that you've brought up that word habit, a lot of what Bashar talks about has to do with our definitions and our beliefs, because he's basically saying that our physical reality is only the product of what we define it to be, only the product of what we believe is true. And so he's very, very good at helping people choose different definitions for things and realize when they've actually gotten stuck in a definition that doesn't serve them. And a very good case in point is the word habit itself. Most people on this planet have been brought up to think that a habit is something you just can't help do. From Bashar's point of view, the definition of a habit is something we don't know we're doing. Once we know we're doing it, once we know we have the habit, he's saying you don't have it anymore. It's actually the realization you have a habit is not the beginning of the process of letting it go. It's the end of the process. It's like you actually have to be outside the forest to be able to look back and see that you were in a forest. So he's saying similarly, you have to be actually outside the habit to know you actually had the habit. And therefore, if you keep doing the same thing after you know you had the habit, it's not a habit any longer, it's a choice. And if you realize you're making a choice, then the logical question that follows is, why would I keep choosing something I don't prefer? And that's when he says, now you have something to work with. Because if you just relegate these habits, you relegate these behaviors to habits, it's out of your control. But if you understand it's a choice you're making, it's back in your control, and you can change the choices that you're making in a variety of ways.
Well, I could see that being incredibly valuable. And speaking of valuable stuff, is it helpful or valuable for us to focus on this December 21st date?
It can be. It depends on how we use it, I think. And again, from Bashar's perspective, he acknowledges and recognizes that since we're putting so much attention on it, and since it is representative of a reflection of our collective consciousness recognizing that we're going through a change, he sort of likens it to the crossing of a threshold. Or he's also sort of used the analogy of the leading edge, the leading shock wave of our collective consciousness building up on itself and getting ready to burst through to another level, sort of similar to the idea of breaking the sound barrier. So, yeah, there is a point there that represents sort of the tipping of the scale, but he's also saying, you know, we've been changing for a while, and we will continue to be changing for a while after that date. It's just that we'll be doing it in a much more accelerated way, and we'll finally have tipped the scales to a slightly more positive collective energy than the negative energy that has existed in the world for so long before that time. Now, he's not saying, you know, everything is going to be peaches and cream the next day. He's just saying that it's like taking a snowball and starting to roll it down a hill. After that date, the ball will roll faster and faster and faster and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and will start to accelerate. So there will be more momentum, more availability of positive energy to align with and to ride that wave faster and faster and faster to create the reality that we really prefer than there ever has been before that date. So it's definitely a key moment, but it's really the result, in a sense, or the reflection of our collective consciousness coming to a head and finally crossing a threshold and creating a new momentum to make it more capable for us to move in the directions that we really prefer and create the realities that we really prefer in life.
And as for reality, Bashar he's focused on, I mean, obviously a lot of what he has to talk about is explaining how reality works for people.
Yes.
And one of the thoughts that I've had for years, and that aligns with what I've heard Bashar saying, is that there are as many realities as there are people.
Yes.
And you know, he's saying, you know, each moment, each choice is, you know, you're choosing a new reality. There's so many endless choices that now it's a new reality.
Yes.
That's a new reality.
Exactly. Literally, he's actually saying that we actually shift from parallel reality to parallel reality billions of times per second, and that's actually what time is. It's a side effect of our consciousness shifting from one reality to another billions of times every second. And that if we start to realize that every single billionth of a second, or whatever you want to say that increment is literally a new reality, and we are literally new people in it, then every single one of those moments, it's all zero. It's all bets are off. We can be anything we would define ourselves to be in that moment. And when we truly get a handle on that, we really, really understand how powerful and how free we really are to create what it is that is truly representative of us.
Well, and another aspect of that is, say you have two people sitting next to each other. You know,
yes.
You're talking about two different realities constantly shifting next to each other.
Yes,
even
and
though
only sharing. Yes, only experiencing something similar because they agree to. Otherwise, they wouldn't. It's like he's saying, you know, people that we consider to be crazy, it's not that they're not necessarily seeing a real reality, it's just that they're not seeing a reality that most of the people agree to see. So we all share what seems to be a similar reality only because part of our consciousness agrees to do that. Otherwise, we actually are truly experiencing our own unique reality.
And as for the reality that we seem to be, well, at least from my perspective, that we seem to be sharing, a lot of us are, we spend a lot of time focusing on the powerful few people who run this planet and keep things for themselves, like the T3RB, and work to keep the rest of us slaving away, distracted, dumbed down, blocked from our awareness of, our true power, our true nature. We call them the Illuminati, the World Order, the Dark Cabal, the Elite, etc.
Yeah.
What is our best defense against them?
Bashar has something very, very interesting to say about that whole idea. He said the one thing, really, that people like that are actually able to control is information. And they don't actually have as much power as you might think. But what they've done is they have very cleverly used fear in people and the choice to focus on fear-based conspiracies in people to make it appear as if they actually have more power than they do. And therefore, they control the information that makes them seem so powerful that there's nothing we can do about it. When in fact, Bashar said the big secret is they're not as powerful as you think, but they're using every means in their disposal to control information to make themselves seem more powerful than they are. And when people fall into the fear-based conspiracy theories too far, they're actually one of the best assets that those people have, because those people are making them seem more powerful than they are by talking about how afraid they are of what these people are capable of doing, and they don't actually have that kind of power. That's the illusion.
So what do we do?
We focus on the things that are representative of what we prefer. We focus on systems that we prefer. We create the systems that we prefer to replace the systems that we don't. It's not about fighting against those people who are operating on a negative wavelength. It's about understanding that they're operating out of fear, they're operating out of a perspective of lack, that there isn't enough to go around, and we know that's not true. But we have to behave as if we know that's not true. We can't play their game of fear. We can't play their game of there isn't enough. We have to start creating the systems that demonstrate that there is enough. We have to start making the changes politically, socially, economically, whatever area of our lives we want to, that demonstrate what we believe to be true, that there is enough for everyone, that everyone has the ability to be self-empowered, that there will not be anarchy just because people are being allowed to be the individuals they truly are. And we have to start really redefining and reinventing ourselves in a much more positive light. And if we start really taking that to heart and start putting that out there more and more strongly, which is happening slowly, they will simply not be able to survive in that light. Now, eventually, what's also happening is because, again, we're all shifting to different parallel realities billions of times a second, it's not even that we're changing the world when we change, when we think about changing them or changing something in the world. We're not actually changing the world we were in. We're shifting to a new parallel Earth that is simply more representative of the change we've made in ourselves. And eventually, the more we do that, we'll simply occupy parallel versions of Earth that simply don't contain people of an incompatible vibration. And eventually, we will no longer experience them. But the longer we choose to succumb to the fear-based ideas that they can control us, the longer we keep shifting into parallel versions of Earth that are simply reflective of the idea that they control everything. So we can shift away from that, But we have to create and generate that state of being for ourselves first and offer them an opportunity to also understand that they don't have to be fear-based, that there is enough for everyone, and that it's a world that can be created with everyone in it that supports the total whole, and it's not just about the few getting what they need because there's not enough for anyone else. That's simply not a definition of a world that works. So we have to generate and live by the definition of a world that does work, and that will make all the difference.
So we want to choose a world where they're no longer in power over us, where people aren't in power over people, where they no longer mar our skies with chemtrails, they no longer feed us lies through the media, hide truths that belong to all of us. Many of us, we believe that we've been actively choosing that world.
Yeah, but the thing of it is most people really don't. The only reason that people like that exist is because we're giving them our power. We are, as Bashar says, look, he says, you are your governments. He said, it's your planet, and if you are afraid of taking power yourself and you're afraid of looking within yourself and facing even some of the things that you've compartmentalized in your own consciousness, then you're going to be giving your power away to someone who says they're going to do it for you. And the more you do that, well, this is what you wind up with. You wind up with people who are more than happy to run your life for you. But when you really, truly start taking your power back, it makes all the difference in the world. But, they're going to fight against that because we've put them in the position of telling them that we believe we need them to take care of us. But once we start really understanding what it means to be self-responsible, and once we explain and start acting like and giving examples of the reality that there is enough for everyone and start creating systems that reflect that, then they will see that they have no place in that world, and they will either have to choose to change or they will simply have to choose to go away. So it's really up to us, again, to direct whatever our experience of that is. Because if we really truly understand that each of us is our own reality, then there is no one who can do anything to us. We're doing it to ourselves by simply agreeing with what it is they're offering us. So we have to take responsibility back for experiencing whatever it is we're experiencing, because the only way we can experience it is to create it in our own reality.
I get that, but I guess what I don't get is, okay, so here's a scenario. I walk out the house in the morning, and I look at the sky, and I see a plane laying down a fresh chemtrail across the sky that I didn't want to see. Yes. And I want to see it stop. In that moment. Okay. Well, let me stop you there.
Let me stop you there. Why do you need to see it stop?
Oh, well, I guess I would say that I need to see it stop because it's, dumping toxins on my planet that is killing plants and trees and affecting me.
Okay, and that's not a reality that you prefer, correct?
Oh, definitely correct.
Okay, but it's not about judging that reality as being less than the reality you prefer. Otherwise, that's what anchors you to that reality. Because when consciousness expands, the expansion of consciousness is not about excluding things, it's about including things. So you can come from a neutral position of saying, that is something I do not prefer. At the same time, that doesn't mean that we have to devalue it and dismiss it and negatively judge it, because if we negatively judge it as being less valuable than what it is we prefer, we're actually staying in that negative energy. So it's all about looking at that and going, okay, I can objectively see that there are people that are in this reality that are choosing those things. I prefer not to. So the first step is to understand that since that is not the world I know I prefer, step number one is I know that no matter what it is I see other people doing, it doesn't affect me. It does not affect my world negatively. In fact, the only thing that will happen from anything I see anyone else doing is I'm going to get a positive benefit out of it. Now, the positive benefit might be bringing it to other people's attention that it's not necessarily beneficial for them either, and helping them understand how they may be able to take actions to make certain kinds of changes within themselves to not do those kinds of things. But nevertheless, it's not about falling under the fear that there is a negative effect in your reality, because there is no physical reality other than your definition of it. So when you define something in your reality as negative, you're only going to be able to get a negative effect from it. But if you define it as positive for you, even if you can objectively observe that someone else may be creating it for a negative reason, then you stay in your power, you're not negatively affected, and that gives you the power to go do something positive about that without feeling like you are a victim of it.
Thank you. Thank you. No, it does make sense, and thank you, because it is a conundrum for people who want to see those things change, and we concentrate on an outcome that we want that doesn't include those things, and we still continue to see these things.
Right, but you see, this is exactly what I was talking about in terms of the idea of controlling information, because when a populace is taught to react to those things in a fear-based way, they are doing exactly what those people want them to do. Because when you react to something in a fear-based way, it disempowers you from doing anything about it.
Thank you. And you mentioned the whole there is no physical reality. I know that Bashar has said reality is not out there, it's only in there, which really fits in really tight with 2 weeks ago we did a show on the holographic universe with author Michael Talbot, the late Michael Talbot. Right. But that really fits in with what he said. So maybe you can give listeners kind of a quick idea of what that means, because it's probably hard for some people to grasp.
I understand. I think the first thing we just need to use is perhaps an analogy that Bashar often uses, and basically says physical reality is happening in your consciousness. But really, if you want to look at it, it's really just like a reflection in a mirror. There's really nothing out there. It's all here. But when you look at a glass mirror, you think, oh, something is over there. Well, not really. All the light is going to the mirror, and it's actually bouncing back to you, and that's why you can see your reflection. Not because you are actually over there. It's just that it's a reflection. So if we understand physical reality as a reflection, then we'll understand that the only way to allow a change to occur in the reflection is to change ourselves. Because if you see your reflection in a mirror frowning, you don't reach out to the mirror and try to change the expression on the face of the reflection. That makes no sense. The only way to get the reflection to change is by you changing your expression first. Then the reflection has no choice but to change. But you have to understand that that's what physical reality is. Now, because it's also an experience that we call time and space in linear time and volumetric space, we can create sometimes a time lag in the time it takes for the reflection to reflect the changes that go on within us. And we will often, in a sense, sort of test ourselves first to see if we really stand behind the conviction that we have actually changed. Because too many people base the choices they make on whether or not the outer reflection changes, instead of simply having the conviction that they have changed and responding differently to the outer reflection, even if it stays the same. The true measure of change is not whether the outer reflection has changed, not whether the outer world has changed. The true reflection of change is whether you respond differently to the world, even if it still looks the same. Once you have proven that you are now changed by not having the same reaction you used to, even if the world still looks the same, then the outer reflection can start to actually change to reflect the change within you, because now it's a true change. You're not basing it on the condition that the outer reflection has to change before you do. In the same way, it'd be like saying, I am not going to smile until my reflection smiles first. It will never happen. You have to just decide. You're going to smile because that's what you prefer. But when you truly decide to smile, even though you're looking at a reflection that's frowning, as soon as you truly smile, the reflection will have no choice but to smile back. But it can't smile first. You can't make it conditional on the reflection going first. You have to go first.
Well, this might seem redundant given the series of questions and the answers for them being similar, but what can we do to hasten UFO disclosure and bring to society as a whole the clean energy technologies that the elite are hiding?
Well, again, I think first thing we need to do is strike that phrase, the elite are hiding, because it pulls us right back into the conspiracy theory, fear-based mindset. We need to understand that there are many people on this planet that are exploring these things. There are many people on this planet that have the ability to tap into their inspiration and imagination to create the systems, the free energy devices, the technology that is required that is more representative of the world that we prefer. And it's all about tapping into that imagination. It's all about being in the state of being that allows us to access the information we need, because we all have access to it. That's the thing about channeling that a lot of people don't understand. Everybody is a channel. Everybody channels from time to time. Anytime you do something you love to do, anytime you are lost in your passion, you are in a channeling state. A singer who's lost in the song, an actor who becomes the character, is channeling. So we all have the ability to tap into source. We all have the ability to download the information we need to create these kinds of technologies, but we have to be in the state that is representative of those technologies, of that world first. It goes right back into the reflection idea. Bashar often says, you cannot perceive information that you are not the vibration of first. It's the same thing Einstein said. You cannot solve a problem from the same level in which the problem was created. You have to go to a higher level to find the solution. The only way that this information will come to people is if they operate on another vibratory level that contains the information. Because if you're fear-based, by definition, you are simply incapable of perceiving solutions to the reality that you're afraid of. You have to already ascend and rise above that reality to find the solution, because the solution exists on another level.
So perhaps the question is less, how can we bring out these technologies that they're hiding, and more, how can we bring out these technologies?
Exactly. So by acting on our highest excitement, by following our passion, by giving over to our creativity, our unconditional love and imagination, by really acting on whatever it is we're most passionate about, that is the thread, that is the path that's going to lead us into the synchronous occurrences, the synchronous experiences that will give us the information we need.
Now, in all the videos I've watched, I've not heard Bashar once make a prediction or prognostication.
There have been a few. It's very rare. Very rare.
I didn't. I was thinking maybe that it's just not what he's here to do. But I was going to ask,
not much.
Has he made any prognostications about open contact and when you're going to get to shake his hand and give him a hug?
Well, not that specifically. I wish he would, but not yet. But let me start by laying down the foundation of how he perceives the idea of prediction itself. From his point of view, there is no such thing as a prediction of the future. There is a sensing of the energy that exists at the time the prediction is made. Mm-hmm. If that energy doesn't change, then what has been sensed will come to pass. But many things can change that energy. That doesn't mean the prediction was wrong. It just means that the prediction rendered itself obsolete by changing the energy, or by having people, knowing the prediction, decide to change the energy. The only things Bashar has ever actually predicted are things he has said had so much energy behind them that the probability of them changing was very, very small. He did actually predict the terrorist attack on New York by the end of 2001, And he did that in 1998, and we have that on tape, because he said it was unlikely to change. With regard to contact, he has said, here are the general windows of energy that are most likely, most probable for open contact to occur. And he did this in 2 phases. And he says, again, this is how we're reading the energy right now. It's unlikely to change, but there's always a chance it might change a little bit. The first thing he said was, based on what he reads the energy now, it appears likely, and I really am asking now people to listen to this very carefully, because a lot of people read into what he said, and they read into it in a misunderstanding. They read a misunderstanding into this. He has said, somewhere between 2015 and 2017, our planet will know, our people will know for a fact that extraterrestrial life exists. Now, he didn't say how that would occur. It could be anything from the discovery of a microbe on another planet to a UFO landing. It doesn't mean that we're going to have open contact. But from that, once we absolutely know for a fact that extraterrestrial life is possible, he said it will change our mindset so strongly that between the years of 2025 and 2033, it is likely we will have some form of open contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. So that's the only thing he's been willing to say about that window at this time.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. That's
Sure.
good information. Now, there's something else. We've seen photos and videos from around the planet for months of a smaller shining object next to our star, the sun. Has that come up? And if so, what is it? Why is it there?
To my knowledge, no one has asked Bashar that question. So
Okay.
I do not know what he would say.
Bummer. I'm really curious about this thing because, you know, I work with video every day, and I do motion graphics, and I know how easy it is to fake UFO videos and stuff like that, and to put things.
I mean, I worked in special effects for 30 years. I completely understand how things like that can be hoaxed.
But there's just so many of them, and I guess I don't have the most educated eye, but looking at all the videos that I've seen, I just don't think they could all be faked, and they're coming from all over. And
yeah, I don't
really
know. I have
there.
Yeah, I have no information on that in order to actually offer an opinion or a comment. It's actually quite surprising sometimes. In fact, I was just discussing this the other day with someone. It's actually quite surprising sometimes what people do not ask Bashar.
For instance?
Well, things like that. Being that there are so many occurrences and so many people talking about something like that, it seems sometimes that it takes quite a while before someone will actually have an opportunity to actually think about asking him something like that. But a lot of times it goes by the wayside because in their mind they have more important things to ask him about that are more immediately relevant to their personal lives.
Do you speak with Bashar telepathically while not channeling on a regular basis?
No, not very often. I've had what I would consider to be 4 dream encounters with him that I know were definitely conversations. I've had a couple of conscious telepathic downloads from him. Like, for example, when a few years after I started channeling, I was very, very curious about how their ships work, what's the principle behind how their ships work. And I got literally a 1-second download that took me 3 hours to write out on paper. So it happens very rarely. I think for the most part, I get what I need while I'm channeling, even though I don't really hear the words of how things are being translated for someone else. The concepts, the basic essential concepts do sink into me. And I can actually have a separate conversation with him while I'm channeling, different from whatever conversation he may be having with the person in the room.
So what is your experience during a channeling?
It's sort of like falling into a very energetic, deep daydream. I don't hear the words, but I know that there are symbols, there's energies, there's feelings, there's concepts. I get pictures sometimes that are literal, pictures sometimes that are abstractly symbolic of what he may be talking about. But it's like, at the end, waking up from a dream. I know I've sort of retained whatever the essence is that I need to know for my life and what the principles are behind the concept, but everything else in the experience just fades like a dream when you wake up in the morning and just goes away.
What about physical sensations?
There's a strong sense of energy flow, a strong sense of oxygenation and support. There's a sense of euphoria. There's a sense, I think one of the strongest experiences I have is in feeling the flow of their thoughts, of his thoughts going through me. I get a sensation of what he and his people feel like, what their emotional state is like. And it's a profoundly different state than what we typically experience on a day-to-day basis as humans on the earth. They have such an incredible sense of conviction, such a sense of knowingness beyond a shadow of a doubt. They have not one second of doubt in their experience, and it's an incredible sensation to experience the erasure of all doubt. Because what they're doing is they're not rendering opinions to us, they're rendering observations. They can actually see the structure of existence as easily as we can look at a red rose and go, yes, that rose is red. It's not an opinion, it's a statement of observation. So when they describe all these principles to us, they're not rendering opinions, they're telling us, they're describing to us how they actually see the structure of existence and how it works. It's it's transparent to them. They can see it like an X-ray.
Well, and I guess that's kind of apparent, that sort of state of being that you describe as him having, of, just knowing how things are and being observing things and just having the conviction, because, there's a marked difference than hearing you, Darryl, speak and hearing Bashar speak.
Yeah.
For instance, I'm pretty sure I've yet to hear him utter a single or
I know, isn't that bizarre?
And he's very insistent and very confident.
Yes.
Now, his ability to do that, is it partially because he's outside of time and able to gather his response outside of time?
Time for them is not what it is for us. He's plugging into and connecting into a variety of different levels of consciousness, a variety of different sources to deliver whatever the information is that he needs to deliver. And so it's just coming through as pure telepathic thought, and it just gets translated through my brain into the language that I was raised to understand, which is English. So it's not like a being is sitting there gathering its thoughts, and that's why, you never hear it, or anything like that. It's sending the entire thought all at once, in a flash, in a flicker, and it's simply then going through the process of simply being smoothly translated by me as a biological telephone or a biological translation device. So it's not like he's actually thinking about the answer in the moment. He's just sending the whole answer all at once.
Does he ever get tired of, waiting for one of us to finish a question in which we just get to the point?
He never gets tired of anything. He will very often help. I'll just say he'll assist a person in getting to the point if he feels that there is a reason to get them to move along for a variety of reasons, but he never gets impatient. He never gets tired. He only does what excites him.
But he knows what's coming, so sometimes he'll just get to it.
So he's helping them become more efficient. I think a lot of times if he's helping someone move along a little faster, it's because he's simply sensing that they have resistance or hesitation that they don't need to have, and he's guiding them into the understanding that they can move along and that there's nothing to be afraid of. They can just get to the point, and it won't hurt.
Well, I'm afraid for listeners who are out there listening to the internet version of this, we're about to go away, and I'm sorry we have just a few seconds. Darryl, I want to thank you so much for coming out and for calling in and having this talk with us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you for creating the forum in which these things can be done. That's acting on your excitement, and that's what makes all the difference. Now,
is there something you've got coming up that you'd like people to know about?
People can go to the website at www.bashar.org, BASHAR.org, and all of the public events that we do, and we do have some coming up in LA, in San Francisco, and in Phoenix in the near future. Everything that we do will be listed on that website, and they can also acquire DVDs and CDs of all the recorded information that Bashar has already given.
A final thought, I ask this of most guests, is there a thought you'd like to leave people with? One kind of over-encompassing umbrella thought that they should take away?
Absolutely, and I only say this because in applying Bashar's information myself, I have seen this work without fail every time I apply it, and that is, please don't be afraid to live your dreams. Please don't be afraid to follow your passion. To whatever degree you're willing to truly act on your highest excitement, it will support you. The only reason it doesn't is due to hesitation or resistance to truly acting fully on it. So please don't be afraid. At whatever rate is comfortable for you, it's up to you. It's your choice. But please don't be afraid to act on your dream. It really is who you are, and that's the most important thing.
Thanks again, Darryl. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it, and my best to everyone listening in. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Namaste, brother.
To you too. Bye-bye.